Hey everyone, and welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be exploring something that might sound a little bit out there at
Yeah,
first.
a little woo-woo, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's called spiritual balancing in relationships.
And before you think this is all incense and crystals, I
Wow.
promise it's not, we're going to be looking at a teaching from the Law of One as our guide,
Okay,
which really dives into the energy dynamics that are at play in all our relationships.
all of them.
That means your best friend, your mom, even that coworker who always seems to push your buttons.
Oh yeah,
You know the one?
definitely.
Yeah.
So this isn't about, you know, becoming some kind of perfectly zen being who never gets, ruffled or upset or anything.
Right.
It's about really understanding why relationships can be so tricky sometimes
Yeah.
and what we can actually do to kind of navigate them
Yeah.
in a way that brings more peace and harmony.
Absolutely. And the Law of One presents these three core principles. They're called the disciplines of the personality. And, they might sound familiar at first, but the way they're applied to relationships is really where the insight comes in.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So let's start with the first one then.
Okay.
It's know thyself,
Yeah.
which sounds pretty straightforward, right? Like self-awareness, know who you are.
Yeah. But in the context of relationships, it goes a little deeper than that.
Okay.
The Law of One really emphasizes that knowing yourself also means understanding where the other person is at,
Okay.
emotionally and spiritually.
So it's about meeting people where they are,
Exactly.
not where we want them to be or where we think they should be.
Yes. And the teaching actually gives this example of somebody who's really identified with their ego.
Okay.
They always need to be right.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe they're blaming others, not taking responsibility for their actions.
You know the type.
You know the type.
Uh-huh.
And it cautions against falling into the trap of what it calls spiritual ego.
Spiritual ego. What is that?
Yeah, it's basically when we think we have all the answers, that our spiritual path is better than everyone else's.
Okay.
And we try to push our beliefs on other people,
Right.
even if it's, with good intentions.
Yeah.
The Law of One is very clear that this type of behavior isn't actually loving.
Right.
It's more about feeding our own ego than actually helping the other person.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So know thyself is about understanding ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
understanding the other person,
Right.
and checking ourselves to make sure we're not coming from a place of ego.
Absolutely.
Okay, what about the second discipline?
It's love thyself, which again, you've probably heard before.
Yeah.
But when we apply it to relationships, the Law of One says it means accepting the other person where they are,
Well,
even if we don't agree with their choices or their actions.
it can be tough though, right?
It can be.
Especially if someone is, doing something that's really hurting us or other people.
Yeah.
How do we accept that?
This is a key point.
Okay,
Acceptance in this sense doesn't mean condoning the bad behavior.
got it.
It's about understanding that everyone is on their own journey, and we can't force anyone to change or to evolve faster than they're ready to.
So it's more about having compassion for where they are on their path,
Yeah.
even if we wouldn't choose that path for ourselves.
Precisely, everyone's learning and growing at their own pace.
Okay.
Trying to force our timeline or our beliefs on somebody else
Right.
just creates resistance and disharmony.
Yeah, it's like you're pushing them away almost.
Yeah, you're pushing them away.
When you're trying to
It
force
is.
them to be somewhere that they're not.
You got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm starting to see how these principles kind of connect.
Yeah.
Know thyself
Hmm.
is about understanding. Love thyself is about acceptance.
Yeah.
So what's the third discipline?
The third one is become the creator.
Okay.
And this one is where it gets really empowering
Oh.
because the Law of One teaches that we have the ability to actually choose our preferred reality.
Hold on. Are we talking about manifesting here? Like if I just visualize a harmonious relationship hard enough,
Right.
it'll magically happen.
It's not quite that simple. It's not about wishful thinking or trying to control other people.
Okay.
The Law of One is much more nuanced than that.
Okay.
It emphasizes that we have the power to choose who we want in our lives
Okay.
and to create healthy boundaries.
So it's more about recognizing that we have choices
Yes.
in how we engage with others,
Exactly.
even when their behavior is challenging.
Exactly. And this discipline really resonated with me
Okay.
because it gives us permission to step back from relationships that are consistently, draining or harmful.
Right.
And it reframes this stepping back as an act of love.
Okay.
not selfishness.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So it's like sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves and
Yeah.
for the other person is to create some distance.
Yes, and the law of one actually uses this powerful analogy of a spacecraft battle
Okay.
to illustrate this point. It describes how a spacecraft that's, aligned with positive energy doesn't try to fight a negative one head on,
Right.
but instead it shields itself with love
Okay.
and refuses to engage in the attack.
So instead of getting caught up in the drama or the negativity,
Yeah.
we can choose to protect our own energy
Yes.
and not participate in those lower vibrational patterns.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that we can't control other people's behavior,
Right.
but we can control how we respond.
Okay, so we've got these 3 principles.
Yeah.
Know thyself, love thyself, and become the creator.
Right.
But how do we actually put all this into practice?
Yeah.
Especially, in romantic relationships
Yeah.
where things can get really intense.
That's where the real work begins.
Okay.
The law of one really emphasizes the importance of becoming attuned to our feelings.
Okay.
And I don't just mean, the happy, feel-good emotions.
So we need to pay attention to the full spectrum of our emotions.
Yes.
Even the uncomfortable ones.
Yes, even the uncomfortable ones.
But how does that help us achieve balance in our relationships?
Because those uncomfortable feelings,
Okay.
the anger, the resentment, the fear, they're like red flags.
Okay.
They're signaling that we've lost our balance, that we've gotten caught up in expectations and attachments.
So, for example, if I'm constantly getting frustrated because my partner doesn't do the dishes the right way,
Right.
or I get jealous when they spend time with their friends,
Yeah.
those are signs that I need to kind of check myself.
Exactly. It's not necessarily about what the other person is doing,
Okay.
but about how we're interpreting their actions
Right.
and how our own internal stuff is getting triggered.
Okay.
The law of one reminds us that, everyone is on their own path.
Yeah.
We can't expect them to meet all of our needs
Right.
or to behave exactly how we want them to.
So it's about taking responsibility for our own emotional reactions
Exactly.
rather than blaming our partner for making us feel a certain way.
Right. And when we notice ourselves getting hooked by those negative emotions,
Yeah.
the law of one offers a really powerful solution.
Which is
Forgiveness.
forgiveness.
Yeah.
That can be a loaded word,
It cares.
especially in relationships where there's been hurt or betrayal.
Yeah.
What does forgiveness really mean in this context?
It's not about condoning bad behavior or letting someone off the hook.
Okay.
It's about choosing to release the resentment, the anger, the blame that we're holding on to.
Right.
It's about choosing to see the situation from a higher perspective.
So forgiveness is more about our own internal state
Absolutely.
than about the other person.
It's about freeing ourselves from the burden of carrying around all that negativity.
Okay.
And according to the law of one, it's essential for restoring balance in our relationships. Because as long as we're holding on to those grudges,
Yeah.
we're blocking the flow of love and compassion.
It's like we're creating an energetic wall between ourselves and the other person.
Exactly. Forgiveness allows us to tear down that wall.
Okay. And to reconnect from a place of understanding and acceptance.
So beautiful.
Yeah. And, the Law of One shares this beautiful passage from A Course in Miracles about this.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
Okay. It says, I am not asked to make a sacrifice to find the mercy and the peace of God. The end of suffering cannot come through loss. The gift of everything can only be a gain. You only give, you never take away.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that true forgiveness isn't about losing anything.
Right.
It's about choosing to see things from a more expansive perspective
Yes.
and understanding that everyone is doing the best they can with the awareness they have in that moment.
Exactly. It's about choosing to respond with love rather than react with fear or judgment.
This is all starting to make sense.
Good.
But I have a question.
Okay.
We've been talking about romantic relationships, but how do these principles apply to other types of relationships, like family or friendships?
Yeah.
Do the same dynamics come into play?
They absolutely do.
We can apply these principles to all of our relationships,
I-
though, the specific challenges and applications might vary.
Okay.
For example, let's say you have a friend who's constantly complaining
Right.
and always focused on the negative.
Oh, I think we all know someone like that.
Yeah.
It can be so draining to be around them.
It can be.
Yeah.
But remember, the first step is know thyself,
Right.
which in this case means understanding where they're at.
Okay.
Why are they so negative?
Yeah.
What might be going on in their life that's causing them to feel this way?
So instead of judging them
Right.
or trying to fix them,
Yeah,
we need to approach them with compassion and understanding.
exactly. And that's where love thyself comes in.
Okay.
It's about accepting them where they are
Okay.
without judgment
Right.
and recognizing that they might be struggling or going through a difficult time.
But doesn't that mean that we're just enabling their negativity? Like if we're always supportive and understanding, won't they just continue to wallow in their misery?
That's a common concern, but remember that acceptance doesn't mean agreement.
Okay.
We can hold a loving space for someone,
Uh-huh.
even if we don't condone their behavior or agree with their perspective.
So how do we do that?
Yeah.
How do we support a friend who's struggling without getting sucked into their negativity?
This is where become the creator comes into play.
Okay.
We have the power to choose how we want to engage with others.
Right.
And we don't have to subject ourselves to abuse,
Okay.
whether it's physical or emotional or verbal.
So we're not doormats.
We're not doormats.
We can say no to negativity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can choose to limit our exposure to their negativity,
Okay.
to gently steer the conversation toward more positive topics,
Uh-huh.
or to lovingly disengage if necessary.
So we're essentially choosing our preferred reality within that friendship.
Yes.
We're setting boundaries to protect our own energy
Exactly.
without abandoning the other person.
Exactly. And that's a really important point to emphasize. Okay.
It's not about controlling them or changing them.
Right.
It's about choosing how we want to interact with them.
Right.
And creating a space that feels good for both of us.
This makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It's like we have more agency in our relationships than we might realize.
Absolutely.
We're not just at the mercy of other people's moods or behaviors.
Precisely. We have the power to choose how we respond,
Yeah.
how we engage, and how we create the kind of relationships that support our own well-being and spiritual growth.
And the law of one emphasizes that this is a journey, not a destination. So it's not about reaching some like perfect state of balance
Yeah.
and then just coasting along.
Not at all. It's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
You know, life throws us curveballs.
Right.
We have bad days.
Yep.
Other people have bad days.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, we're constantly learning and evolving.
Right.
The law of one is very clear that this is a practice, not a one-time fix.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's like learning to ride a bike, you know?
You're going to wobble. You
Yeah.
might even fall a few times.
Yeah.
But eventually you get the hang of it.
Exactly. The key is to stay aware.
Right.
Keep practicing.
Okay.
And remember those core principles.
Okay.
Know thyself, love thyself, and become the creator.
And forgive ourselves when we mess up.
Yes. Forgiveness is like the reset button.
Okay.
It allows us to release those negative emotions that are blocking the flow of love and compassion.
You mentioned earlier that forgiveness doesn't mean condoning bad behavior,
Right.
but it's about freeing ourselves from resentment.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure.
I think it's something a lot of people struggle with.
Forgiveness is often misunderstood.
Yeah.
It's not about saying what someone did was okay.
Right.
It's about choosing to detach from the anger and the hurt so that we can move forward.
Okay.
The law of one reminds us that, you know, everyone is doing the best they can with the level of awareness they have in
Yeah.
any barren moment.
So it's about recognizing that people make mistakes.
Yeah,
We make mistakes.
absolutely.
And holding on to resentment only hurts us in the end.
Precisely. And it keeps us stuck in those lower vibrational patterns
Right.
that we were talking about earlier.
This has been so incredibly helpful.
God, I'm glad.
I feel like I have a whole new understanding of how to approach my relationships.
Me too.
Yeah.
The law of one provides such a practical and insightful framework
Uh-huh.
for creating more harmonious connections
Right.
with everyone in our lives.
It's really empowering to realize that we have more agency than we might think.
Absolutely.
We're not just victims of circumstance
Right.
or other people's behavior.
We have the power to choose love,
Wow.
to choose forgiveness, to choose our preferred reality.
That's such a beautiful reminder.
Yeah, it is.
So for all our listeners out there, remember, every interaction,
Yeah.
every relationship
Yeah,
is an opportunity for growth
absolutely.
and for practicing these principles.
Keep practicing.
You got this.
You got this.
And if you want to kind of delve deeper into this topic
Yeah.
or explore how these principles can be applied in your own life,
Right.
visit www.ultimatemasters.org/coaching.
Yes.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
We release new episodes daily.
Right.
So be sure to check back in tomorrow
Yeah.
for more mind-expanding explorations.
Awesome.
Until then, keep exploring,
Yeah.
keep growing,
Uh-huh.
and keep choosing love.
Keep choosing love.